All right. Hello, everyone. And we are live. I would love for you to put in the chat if you have attended what are we on, 12 sessions, or if you've attended 2, just throw in the chat how many sessions you've attended, or let me know if you've been learning something amazing. This is the last day of live sessions for Open Campus. You have about 13 more hours, I think, if you want to get in there and binge a course for free. Again, there's also prizes. So we will be choosing one MVP if you want to go and throw out a LinkedIn post. And just, make sure that you are still taking advantage of everything for this final hours. Today, we are talking about what employers are actually looking for in data roles. And so I am here today with Albert Bellamy and Tice Cook. We're going to have an awesome discussion. Just quick reminder, so this will be emailed to you after the show. If you have to drop off for any reason, you will get this in your email a couple hours later. Use the question and answer tab because we are going to have Q&A at the end, and your questions might get lost if you try and put them in the chat. So use the Q&A. And if you have not yet subscribed on YouTube or followed us on LinkedIn, make sure to do that so that you stay up to date with all the upcoming Mavens of Data shows and all the promotions that are going on. So today, we are going to be talking about what employers are really looking for, how you can show those skills, how employers think about assessing people for impact and how they think about your cultural fit and fit for the job. Whew. And so after this, we have one more live session, and it is with me. I am going to be I am going to be going through a number of the machine learning models that I've built, how I presented them to the business poorly, and how I do it today, and how to improve communication with stakeholders. Also, just before we hop in, I think I have one more slide too. Okay, so Black Friday is also officially underway. So you can save up to 50% off on Maven Pro plans. So be sure to check that out. That's mavenanalytics.io/Black Friday, Black-Friday. But also, Albert is the author of the Data Analytics Career Playbook. So I want to share that here. And then
I actually just got my proof copy of the hardcover.
Ooh,
that's what I was opening just now. That's what was funny when Desiree said she's got Amazon coming. I was like, hey, look, Amazon.
Yeah, don't miss Amazon.
And Tice has her new LinkedIn learning course. It's Data Governance for Healthcare. And so I highly recommend you check that out as well. And we have finally made it through all of the notes. Okay, so thank you guys so much for coming. Do we want to go around the room real quick and introduce ourselves before we jump in? Albert, do you want to start?
Sure. So yeah, you can see the shirt. I am Major Data. I spent some time in the Marine Corps. It's kind of my calling card. For anybody that remembers the show Major Dad, one of my favorites. Yeah, I help people get into data analytics. I are a data analyst myself, and I have a passion for helping other people ease that somewhat painful transition into the domain. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of technical instruction out there. And my thing is there are many unemployed data analysts that have staggering technical skills and just can't figure out why they're not getting an opportunity, why they can't catch a break as they see it. And I decided that, hey, getting into this field at the ripe old age of 45, that I was not going to be anybody's SQL or Python hero, but the thing that I naturally gravitated towards was the career skills. And so I built a network. I started making content. It's just because it seemed like fun, honestly, and I'm kind of lazy, and I just want to do the things that are fun. And I did a post about that recently. Teus, I'm sorry, I was crapping on SQL, but topic for another time. But
I don't take it personal.
Yeah, I know. Well, it wasn't meant that way. But what I find is that if the data analysts out there that are struggling, if they devoted a little less time to technical skills and a little more time to the career skills that we're going to talk about here today, that is much more high leverage. And an hour spent on your resume is probably going to move the needle more than an hour spent on code skills or building algorithms, stuff like that. Because you're probably technically qualified already. And once you get a job, they're going to have you focus on what they want technically. So, all right, I've talked enough. I've worked for a bunch of different companies, big companies, small companies, startups, in tech, in marketing. And so I've seen a lot of aspects of people trying to get jobs, people trying to grant jobs, and the struggle therein. So eager to talk about it here today.
Awesome. I love the later career transition. I feel like that's super inspirational. And a lot of people, when they hit, because I'm in my 40s too, a lot of people, when you start getting up there, you start thinking like, oh, it's too late. And it's totally not too late. That's awesome. And also, your point about people having the technical skills and not really focusing on how they market themselves. That was certainly a pitfall I had. I didn't realize that if I could market myself, you could land a job with if you're the strongest person in the room and you can't communicate that to somebody, then nobody knows, right? Yeah. Awesome. Thais, can we hear from you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Thais Cook. I have been in data. I'm also a late career transition as well. I transitioned to the data world from, I think I was 38 years old at that time. And my entire life, I was in clinical healthcare. I was in dentistry. I'm a dentist in my country, came over here, became a dental hygienist. And for a while, I was stuck in the mindset of, that's all that I know. All that I know is dental hygiene. But then when you look on a different angle, I have so many analytics skills in that job that I didn't even realize. And now in hindsight, I realize how much of analytics I was using in that position, in that job too. So I love creating content also for the career people that are doing this transition. It's never too late. You might think it's late, but sometimes I see people saying, oh, I'm 28, 29 years old and I'm starting a new career. I'm like, dude, I'm 38, 39. It's never, ever too late. And the skills that you're building, you might not even realize how useful they are in data. And even if later on in life, you want to do another transition, hey, it's just everything is building up and as a part of a story. It's not everything in a box, So love create content. I created a course in SQL that is for healthcare professionals, because healthcare is a little bit of a tricky industry. And another one for data governance also in the healthcare industry, because it's a little bit different than other industries. And yes, I create content on LinkedIn. Basically, whatever comes to my mind, I think I like to talk and network with different people. And I put it out there because I think, you know what? If this helps one person out there, that's good enough. And I am so thankful for all the people who create content that they were doing this, and they don't even realize how much they helped me when I was stuck, when I was in that position of what am I going to do with my life now? Where am I going to go? Which skills should I have? So so that's why I do what I do. So
awesome. Yeah, I love your point on transferable skills. And I haven't heard as many people talk about how you were able to go from dental and recognize those transferable skills and go to data, but also the fact that if you want to branch off into something else later, there's going to be a ton of transferable skills that you learn in data that you can also apply to something else. I honestly think having data skills is like a superpower in other areas too. Then you end up with people who, that's not their domain.
Yeah.
Okay. So hopping right in. When employers say that, business impact, that's what matters, right? If somebody is new and trying to display that business impact, or that they can have that impact, how do they get that across in a credible way? How do they maybe do that with like an early project they've created? How can somebody who's new show impact?
No, go ahead, Albert. You go first.
Sorry, I should have said
you
a
go
name.
first.
All good. I think that, I think it's well known that you need to show quantifiable impact if you can on your resume. What's not as well known, I think, is that there's levels to that. And I spelled it out. I did a video once. I can't remember which one it was, but I spelled it out that the way I saw it, there was like 4 or 5 levels of how to quantify impact. So the gold standard is if you can show impact on we tend to call big blue arrow. So known KPIs, everybody knows what they are. Top line revenue, profit margin, costs, work hours, whatever. I can say that to anybody in any domain and they know exactly what I'm talking about. If you can show that at some point you've had a measurable impact on one of those known KPIs, standard business KPIs, that's great. But even within that, showing in actual numbers, it's much better to say, I did this project that drove $25,000 increase in top line revenue than to say I drove a 5% increase in revenue. Why? Because first of all, a percentage is relative to the whole. So if it's 5%, if you're in a first quarter startup and your revenue last month was $500 and this month is $1,000, and you say I did a 100% increase in revenue, well, you're probably still in the red. So that's not terribly impressive. But if you, as a kind of lowish level analyst, did real numbers and you quantified it, both of those things are impressive. The other thing about percentages is there's a whole lot of nice round percentage numbers being cranked out by large language models out there, and people are slapping them in their resumes and calling it good. I got numbers, and they think they're in there. And it's anybody that reads more than a handful of resumes looks at it and goes, oh, a 25% increase in operational efficiency. Define that for me.
Yeah, what's operational?
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
And if you start muddling around the issue and kind of looking down at the ground and mumbling about something, they know that the gig is up. So those are the best. And then down from there, you're talking about, percentage increases. If you have like a localized KPI, if you have something that's specific to a domain, something that's like exists in manufacturing or marketing, where I started out, we had all kinds of internal marketing nerd numbers that nobody outside of marketing probably really understands. So if it requires an explanation, that's not quite as effective. And then when you get to the bottom, it's like mundane tasks. Like if you do something once and it's not impressive, it doesn't become impressive when you do it 100 times. So, saying like, hey, I managed to pass this safety inspection 100% of the time. Well, okay, if you did it 100% of the time, it can't be all that tough. So it's almost not worthwhile putting a number there. Just passed all my safety inspections, and if you need to put that on there. But yeah, it's best if it doesn't require an explanation. If I say I drove 50,000 in revenue, everybody knows, hey, that's a big sexy number, and well done.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm just making a quick note. Guys, can you ask your questions in the Q&A just so that they don't get lost? Sorry about that, guys. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, no, all that I would add, yes, would be to connect to the pain points of the business. And each industry you work at, there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be pain points. So just, make that address those issues. So for instance, I come from healthcare. One big pain point that we have are waiting times in the ER. or readmission rates. And the beauty of career transition is that if you are in the field, you know firsthand what the pain points are. You know it, you live through it. So make the connection of how I'm going to address this, how am I going to reduce the waiting time in the ER, for instance, and go into a data set. And it doesn't even need to be like a crazy complex data set, or get a simulated data set and explain, in the case of a project, and explain, hey, this is what the data is telling me, this is your problem, and this is how we should bridge this, so address the pain points.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it also makes me think of too, sometimes, right, in analytics, we do projects and they're not always winners. Sometimes there's not always something interesting. Sometimes we build a dashboard and it's just so somebody has visibility into metrics that they didn't have visibility into before. But I feel like you can say that, right? It's like, I built this, gave them visibility into specific thing. Don't use the business jargon, but what it actually is that they didn't have before. And then, did they make a decision off of it? It helped them move forward with this project as opposed to that project. And maybe that's not, I increased sales by a gazillion %, but it is like, there was a business problem and I did solve it, whether you think it's important or not. That was a thing I was given, and I built off of that. And so
I would say, in that, not to cut in, but I'll forget it if I don't. That in that case, what I would say is the sexy thing is the level of the stakeholder. If you can say this was used by the CFO or CIO or CMO, like anything like that, whole C-suite, awesome. If this is something you're briefing to the head shed every time, that's the impressive part, in lieu of, if you've measured impact on it.
Yeah, no, and that's easier to get to when you're at a small company, right? Because then those levels are a little bit more, you have FaceTime with them.
Yeah.
Okay, so we all know that job descriptions can sometimes be a little wild. What are your thoughts on what we are currently seeing in job descriptions in terms of like the tools that they're looking for or the techniques that they're asking you to have? And sometimes it's numerous. What are you seeing in terms of like what's being asked on that job description versus like what a hiring manager is actually looking for? Or if there's, a million things listed, is that the reality? Do they typically only care about one or two? Like, what is your sense? Tice, do you want to go first?
Okay, so I'm going to start by saying that that's a big pet peeve of mine. When I look in a job description and I see every single tool under the sun listed there. Because as a candidate, of course, you're going to be confused. Of course, you think, what exactly do they use? I've seen job descriptions asking for Tableau, Power BI, and Click all in one. I'm like, you use 3 visualization platforms? So, so that's a big pet peeve of mine. I started by saying right there, right off the bat. But I think when it comes to the interview, try to focus more on the skill itself versus the tool. So, for instance, let's say that Power BI. Let's say, okay, we use Power BI, that's listed, and you have experience with Tableau. So I think what the employers want to hear is not that you know every single DAX syntax like the back of your hand. What they want to hear is, okay, how do I build a dashboard? How do I communicate my data using visuals? And the good thing is when you shift this focus from the tool to the skill, you're actually telling them that you are adaptable. So going back to, I know Tableau, I don't know Power BI, you can say, hey, this is how I build my visualizations in Tableau. I bridge the data this way, and tell them how you build the visualization. I'm again using this word like visualization of, oh, I know Tableau, I know Power BI. So this way it also shows that you're adaptable. You know the skill really well. You know how to translate the insight, but you can adapt to whatever tool the business has.
Mm-hmm. Agree. And that's been my like experience too, is that, you know, I've used Azure and then I go someplace that's GCP and it's like, well, yeah, I don't know how to use the tool. And yes, when you hop in, it can be confusing, but I very much understand where I'm going, what I'm trying to do, and the things that I need to look out for, right? So like, I'm going to catch up a little bit faster than somebody who has not used that type of technology before. Albert, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this is one of those things. It's not a, I would say it's a myth because I do see it happening. I don't think it happens quite as often as you might think if you're kind of sucking up content from LinkedIn influencers all day, which I do, admittedly. But what I would say, because I are one, what I would say is I dropped it in the chat. The skills listed are often the things that you may be called on to do on any particular day. And I'll take it back to, you know, me crapping on SQL. Not that I hate SQL, but I hate and this is a myth, that every analyst must know SQL. Blatantly false. Absolutely not true. I have a very cursory knowledge of SQL. In multiple full-time jobs, I have been called upon to use SQL a handful of times. More often what I need is kind of a treetop view of it, the knowledge of the basic functions and being able to kind of sanity check it. But I'm sure if I went back and looked, some of the jobs that I got listed SQL as a required skill. And it is, but it's only required for me like once a month. Whereas, some people's experience is I used SQL all day, every day in the first 5 years that I was a data analyst. Absolutely, not questioning their experience. I'm just saying, like the places I've worked, and people that list. You talked about having multiple data platforms. Coming from marketing, we had to operate in the platform that the client wanted.
Yep.
So our flagship platform was called Datarama. It was was bought by Salesforce right around the time I joined the company. I was not very good in it, was not certified. I wound up being the Alteryx guy, and the rest is history. We also had people that were certified in Power BI, and if there was a Power BI project that came down the pipe, they generally got assigned that. Everybody had to have at least a cursory knowledge of each of the systems, because if the Power BI people were tapped out, well, the next project was coming to me, and I better be able to muddle through it. So I think that happens a lot of the time. Most job listings that I see, they'll be pretty good about must-have and nice-to-have. And the must-haves, they're must-haves. If they break that out for you, you can shoot for the moon, and you can buy lottery tickets all day, and you can try for that dream job and say, oh, my favorite LinkedIn influencer told me I only needed 60 or 70% of the requirements to be competitive. Maybe, and under the right circumstances, and if they're hurting for people. But most likely, if you apply for a job where you only have 7 out of 10 must-haves, you're not going to get a call. And, it gets frustrating to me to see people out there complaining like, oh, I'm not getting calls. And then when you get in a conversation with them and you say, what's the job you applied for? What's your actual skill set? You see that these two things do not equate. Why aren't you looking for jobs that you can do right now? So yeah, it is happening sometimes. I don't think it's the epidemic that people sometimes make it out to be. And the thing with you need 5 years of Python to be an entry level. I see rare occasions of that happening. I do not see that common. Every once in a while, I'll do a cursory search for entry-level analyst positions just to sanity check and be like, am I crazy? And yeah, I don't think I think if you don't get wrapped around the axle with it, if you don't get caught up in the hype, if you just go look for jobs yourself, you're going to find some that are at your level.
That was such an important point you made, though, about job descriptions potentially listing stuff and then not actually having to use those skills. So when you're in an interview, you want to be asking, because my first data scientist role, they had listed a bunch of different machine learning techniques. I wanted to be able to, further my machine learning. And then really it ended up being like a data analyst position with, building models maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah.
And like that was a question I should have asked, because it goes both ways. And especially too, like people want to look like they're using the more sexy technology, that they're doing more sexy things, that sexes up their job description. And then you get in there and they're like, here's Excel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I love that
true.
point that like, don't punt your questions. Like too many people walk in there. It's like, I got it. I've got to ask questions in the interview or I'll look dumb. But they waste their questions. They go in there like, what's your average work day? What's the corporate climate like? What do you like about stop it? You've wasted your like that's your opportunity to find out about the job and find out if you want it. Because it's not, nobody's got a gun to your head. If you go in an interview and they say, hey, we'd like to offer you a job, you don't have to say yes. Maybe they creep you out. Maybe you get a weird vibe. Maybe you think like, hey, this isn't the job that I thought it was from the listing. That happens.
Yeah.
And your way to figure that out is to ask them questions, and good questions about the job, assuming that you're going to get it.
It's a two-way street. The same way they're interviewing you, you're interviewing them too. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And when it comes to tech stack, I love what you both said about the tech stack, because like, for instance, I use SQL a lot on my work. It was my bread and butter. But I know amazing data analysts who are doing a great impact with Excel, others with Tableau, others with Power BI. So I agree 100% in having that cursory level on the tools. But and also agree asking the questions during the interview, and then once you get to the job, then you see where it's going to take. Because honestly, I didn't think I was going to use SQL as much as I do. I use every day. Good thing that I love it. But yes, it's true. Like the tool is like a means to an end, and your driving impact is going to be, people I know. Senior data analysts, entry-level data analysts, they use different tools and they're creating impact at the end.
Yeah. And I do want to say that I absolutely love Excel. It was that the job was not as advertised. Not as advertised.
Desiree groaned when you said Excel.
It was an Excel this morning. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so how would you evaluate whether if you're interviewing somebody, how would you be evaluating whether a candidate can collaborate effectively? Like, what should people be doing to show that they can work with stakeholders, they can work with engineering? How do they want to think about that? Albert, do you want to go first?
Yeah. I mean, the obvious answer is it's the behavioral questions that you're going to get. And so that's why those are so crucial. You don't want to, when you get the behavioral question, like, tell me about a time you worked with a difficult person and how did you get through that? How did you manage to still produce? Or, did you, tell me about a project where, you didn't get along with your boss or something. You don't want to, first of all, the absolute worst tactic is, well, I want it to be natural. I don't want it to sound rehearsed. So I'm just going to go in and, speak from the heart. Please don't do that. Don't do that. Rehearse. Better to sound a little over rehearsed, but give a good answer than to stumble through an answer with a bunch of ums and ahs and ramble. So rehearse, but also you want to have, I think, what Madeline Mann calls a story swipe file. And that's, highly recommend her book if you don't know who that is, Madeline Mann. But the story swipe file is just, if you have a half dozen key stories, like crazy things that happened to you, that nut job that you had to work with at your last job, or, the time that the office caught fire or something, and you can pull those out and they're fun stories, they're interesting stories, and maybe painful stories. But you can tell those on command and you can adapt them to a couple different situations or a couple different questions. And you want to rehearse those stories so that you can evoke emotion and create identification with your audience. So it should be kind of sitcom type stories, like crazy situations that everybody can go, oh my gosh, or I've done that as well, or I totally identify with that. And master your storytelling ability about those situations. The other one I would say is just it's how you are in the interview. And I know Alex a while back, he did a post where he talked about making eye contact, and he got a bunch of blowback from people with the the neurodivergent crowd and all of that, saying, what if you're not, you don't communicate that way. And I get it, but the point is you have to communicate in a way. I mean, you have to adapt yourself to your audience. You wouldn't go in there speaking Russian and the office speaks English and expect them to adapt to you. The same way, you've got to communicate with people on their level if you want them to offer you the job. So, going in there and just seeming like a functional human being, you're going to get questions you're not expecting. They're going to have one good stumper for you, and you're going to be like, ooh, didn't rehearse that one. They're doing that to see if you can adapt and if you can, if you can deal with an unforeseen circumstance, and to see how you break down a problem or think on your feet or communicate where you're not quite ready. So those are the ways I would say, like, how can you collaborate? How can you work with others? Show them that you can communicate and show them that you can tell a story.
Mm-hmm. But even the exercise of going through and rehearsing the answers to those behavioral questions in the STAR format or whatever, it prepares you for those stumper questions too. And I've also found that, like, sometimes I'll get a stumper question, but I'll also find that I can sort of tweak something I had already rehearsed and like fit it in there, so it really, and my other big thing is tone. Like, if they're asking you for a time that something and the question's negative, it's like, I have to put so much practice into rehearsing and making sure that when I read it back, it doesn't come across as, I think these people are jerks, right? Like that becomes the exercise, is how do I, Thais, what do you have to add?
I think when it comes to that, I also like to observe the tone of the interview throughout the whole process, because there is a difference between saying something like, I created a model that increased accuracy by 15%. Okay, good. And if I say, hey, I reached to the customer service team that explained to me what the pain points were, I created a model based on what they said, and this model increased accuracy by 15%, which addressed their pain point, and that was the solution. So it goes back to the storytelling that Albert was saying. And that I can see, wow, okay, just in this, that shows me that this person is reaching out across departments, is addressing solutions, is collaborating. So that's one of the things. And the other thing that I observed too, and this is more for the technical folks, and I include myself in that because I can be super technical sometimes too, is if during the interview, the person is using a lot of technical jargon in there, if the person can explain to me what their work is without this technical jargon, in the back of my mind, I'm already like, okay, this person knows how to communicate with non-technical stakeholders. And this is a great skill to have. So if the person is doing that throughout the interview, the person doesn't even have to say, oh, I communicate well with non-technical stakeholders. Yeah, I can see it. You communicate. You explain to me your work without the technical jargon, I didn't even have to ask. So it's those little signals like throughout the interview process that, catch my attention.
Absolutely. So I'm noticing that we have 17 questions, which is a ton. So I think we're just going to do one more question here, and then we'll head over to Q&A, because I'm sure they're great questions that are, this topic anyways. Okay, so when employers are talking about cultural fit, how are you thinking about assessing for that? Or how should somebody be thinking about displaying that they're a good cultural fit? And Thais, do you want to go first?
Well, I think cultural fit, there's a misunderstanding in there, because I think cultural fit, sometimes people tend to think everybody's the same. It's all the same personality, it's all the same. And I don't think that's quite the right thing to think about. I think each company, they have their core values, and it's going to be different from one company to the next. So if that person is showing me through the interview that that person has the core values that my company wants, that's a good candidate. So let's say, for instance, let me give an example. The three of us work in the same company, and one of the core values is collaboration. And we collaborate really well. We align so well in that. But if you notice, we come from different career paths, but we align well in this. So that's culture fit. So that's what I try to see, is to focus on those core values. And like I said, this is going to change from one company to the next. Well, one company values might not be what another company does. But as long as there's that alignment and there's different career paths, it's actually good, because it creates like diversity and people can see problems from different angles. So yeah, I think culture fit, pay attention to what is important, what is the core value of the company, and if the person aligns well with that.
That's a good point too, because I didn't always look up the core values before I'd walk into an interview. And nowadays you look them up, you think about how you can try and display those. Albert, do you have some thoughts on cultural fit?
Yeah, really quick. I tend to split the job process down into the personal and the impersonal phase. So the impersonal phase is early on, you've applied for the job, your resume is getting read, they may check your LinkedIn profile, they may check your portfolio. I'm not as high on that as a lot of other people are. But certainly the resume primarily and the LinkedIn profile, kind of a close second, are the two things that you need. But they're checking that to make sure you're qualified. And that's what a lot of people kind of miss, is like, if they get you to a phone screen, and certainly if they get you into an interview, according to them, you're qualified. They get you into the interview to, first of all, sanity check your public facing documents. So it's like, is your resume valid? If I poke you in the chest about something on your resume that seems a bit sus, can you explain it well so that it seems good? And, so I get it like, hey, you said you know Python. I poked you in the chest about this Python project. You explained it well. Short of a technical interview, I trust you know Python. So that's kind of the impersonal part. The personal part is, that's where you establish culture fit. Because once you're in the interview room, they're not going to waste their time bringing in somebody that's not at least qualified on paper. So if they bring you into the interview room, either personally or remotely, they know they're willing to accept you as a candidate for the job as is. They ask you about your resume is valid, you've got enough at that point. They're not going to then disqualify you saying, oh, we asked for 5 years of experience, you only have 3. Well, they called you in with 3, which means they're willing to accept 3 if you kill the interview. Yep. And so killing the interview is the culture fit. That's when they're looking you in your beady little eyes and saying, can this person communicate? Can they represent? Can they do the work? Can they handle tough questions? And if the answer is no, sometimes you may hear, oh, we went with someone with more experience. Nah, BS. They went with someone who killed the interview. And you didn't show enough in the interview to overcome maybe that tiny differential there. So yeah, getting in there and winning the interview, and telling good stories, communicating, asking good questions, showing that you're a person that they're like, yeah, I could hang out with this person for 8 hours a day, and have a conversation with them as well as work with them. That's culture fit to me.
That hit when you said they went with the person who killed the interview, right? Like, it's not.
Nobody's in the hiring process to waste their own time. It sucks. Yeah. Hiring people is terrible. They want to get it done quickly, so they're not going to interview people that aren't qualified. So yeah, that's another myth out there. Like, yeah, I went on 7 interviews, didn't get a job because I'm not qualified. No. Why would they call you in? Why bother? Like, they know what your resume says. So yeah, if I could Vulcan mind meld truths into people's brains, like, trust me, this doesn't make sense. Don't believe it.
Right. All right. Awesome. So due to the large number of questions, we're going to head over to Q&A now, as long as you guys are ready. I just want to quick, before we go over, share Albert's book one more time. And here is Theis's LinkedIn learning course.
Let's see if I can get it
looking
focused. There we go.
beautiful, beautiful cover.
Yeah.
And then just real quick too, the Maven Analytics Black Friday sale has started, so definitely check that out, up to 50% off Maven Pro plans. Okay, and here we go. Preeti has asked how to explain a career gap in an interview, and then I'll leave it up, whoever feels like a burning desire to attack this one. Yep.
Yeah, so this is a concept I love, that don't dance around the elephant in the room. You know where your gaps are. And if you have a career gap, and we won't belabor what that is, but recently, 6 months or more, anytime in your professional career, a year or more, that's not related to education, that's a career gap to me. Don't tap dance around it. Don't hope they won't see it, because they see it. And the concept that I always like to tell people is, you want to go on offense. If there's an elephant in the room, call it out right away and talk about it on your terms. You want to control the narrative. So you took 6 months off in 2024 because you had a baby, or your grandma got sick and you had to be a home caretaker. First of all, I would put that on the resume so that there's no question. But yeah, that's kind of a delicate thing for some people. But yeah, get out there and talk about it. You got a career gap? Why? If you can't explain it, well, I mean, there's an explanation. You might not want to come out with it, but yeah, I would say, like, whatever you did, and even if it's something like, like we used to say, I had to take a knee. I had to take a quick sabbatical and get my head right. Talk about the things that you accomplished in that time. I took 6 months off from the workforce to recenter myself. My last job was a grind, and I had to, I had enough runway that I could take some time off, and so I did. And in that time, I completed this course, and I earned this certification, and I did 20 informational interviews. Make sure all that's true. But yeah, just talk about it on your terms. Go on offense.
I love that. The idea that I had the runway, and I did. And that's like a very different vibe than you typically hear from the person who's trying to, it just sounds like more like self-deprecating or whatever. Like yours comes across as like confident. This is a choice I made, and this is how I executed that. I love it. Theis, do you have something to add?
No, I agree 100%. I mean, I think everybody had some career gap on COVID. I mean, think about that. I mean, so had a career gap and did exactly that. I said, listen, I had this career gap because of COVID. I didn't feel like being in people's mouths. At that time, I was still a hygienist. I didn't feel very comfortable in being in people's mouths. Completely understandable. I mean, so that's when I took a step back. But during that time, guess what I did? I got courses in Excel. I got this certificate. I got this course in SQL. I got this course in Python, and so on. This is what I did with that career gap, with that time off that I had. So, yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%.
Okay. Next question comes in from Pratib. Sorry if the pronunciation was really poor. Do data analysts need basic data engineering and basic machine learning knowledge to qualify in this job market?
I say, for my own experience, I use data engineering principles in my work, but that's because I want to make my life easier. So I like to work smarter, not harder. So that's why I ended up going that route. But to qualify, no, I think what you really need is to show how you connect the data to the problems. At the end of the day, we're problem solvers. And if you use data engineering principles, machine learning principles to solve these problems, great. But I don't think you necessarily need to have that listed. If you do, great. But if you don't, I don't think so. I think as long as you're solving the business problems, that's what data analysts do at the end.
Mm-hmm. Albert?
Yeah, I concur with that. I don't think to qualify, my question would be qualify for what? But yeah, like anything else, like, like my knowledge of SQL, I would say like having a cursory knowledge of machine learning concepts and algorithms. One of my favorite books, and I wish you would update it, is Confident Data Skills, Kirill Eremenko.
Oh yeah, I have that
Absolute
one.
classic.
It's right over there
Yep.
on with my books.
It's a page turner. It's quick. It's but it's a perfect primer on kind of basic machine learning algorithms. Doesn't do data engineering much, but I saw a lot of questions in the chat about analytics engineering. And so, yeah, data engineering, I would say everybody's doing APIs now. Everybody's linking to large language models. You got to have a little bit of that. Do you need to be like coding it up, massive pipelines? Probably not. But yeah, do you need to know how to connect a couple of platforms together with some basic APIs? Certainly. So yeah, I would say cursory knowledge or kind of wave top knowledge of both of those is a big plus.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. And so you already sort of touched on the analytics engineer thing that I'm now seeing in here. The question that you put a smiley face on, should I bring that one up? I don't have a button
sure.
anymore. Okay, so this one I can't show the live answer, press the live answer this button, but this is from Ledetu. As someone just starting out in data analytics with no formal work experience, what skills or types of projects would make me stand out to employers the most?
Yeah, so skills wise, I would just say like everybody knows what the boilerplate ones are. There's nothing really to be added to that knowledge. I would just say what I talked about the other day, like do something that is fun and challenges you. Like life's too damn short to be grinding away at a skill that you find dull. Try a few things and take the one that seems fun to you, that's in some demand. Like if you go do a job search and a bunch of companies list it, like, hey, we're looking for this, just have at it. If there are people that love Power BI, I've never really played with Power BI, but great, if you love it, keep doing it. But I think the overarching thing with this that I like to identify is, do you come into an interview with some passion and some interest in a specific thing? So everybody's out there saying, I got a passion for data analytics, which I think is just the corniest thing ever. Like it's super easy to say that like in a general sense. Oh, I have a passion for data. Really? I guarantee I can find you data jobs out there that would bore you to death. So you don't have a passion for data. You have a passion for certain kinds of data or doing certain things with data. I'm not a big fan of visualization. I don't find it that much fun. I don't find any interest in painting pretty pictures, really. But I do love like, data quality and, and building pipelines and automation and stuff like that. That fascinates me. Data, like manufacturing data, bores me to death. But marketing, I love. But I know tons of people that hate marketing. So I would say the types of projects is, if you can walk into a marketing analytics interview and you have marketing analytics projects on your resume, you're in there. They're going to hire you.
Yeah.
And if you can speak about those projects with some excitement and enthusiasm, not passion for data, but I'm excited about this thing that I did in marketing. I read this paper or this book that pertains. That's the winner.
Yep. And use the Maven Analytics showcase to like create a portfolio. There are data sets out there that are, customer lifetime value, retention, all of these topics that like, if you're going into marketing analytics, they're going to want to, the idea that you might have experience working with that type of data or working with those types of problems and just thinking about it, maybe trying to come up with some recommendations. Like that's, I do love when people do personal projects that they're passionate about and that they're excited about. And if you light up in an interview because you're talking about something you built, that's awesome too. And that's also going to get across. But there are some core marketing analytics type problems that like, you can focus on those for your portfolio and it's already like a home run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. This is from Baba. What role-specific expectations exist for data analysts versus data scientists versus data engineers? Does anyone want to share what, like, some of the core differences are between the roles?
Those roles, honestly, they're blending in so much lately. It's very hard to just say you are a data analyst, therefore all that you do is walk out of Excel and do visualizations and gather insights. And it's almost like you, let's say, if you're a data analyst, you do that, but you also do a little bit of data engineering, you do a little bit of data science, in your role. And I see also a lot of job titles kind of like being there's that discrepancy between the job title and what you actually do on the day to day. So yeah, that's tough for me to quantify, to like express on an answer, to be honest.
Albert, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say data analysts, you answer what happened and why did it happen. Data scientists, you're answering what will happen and how can we make something happen. And data engineers, you're constructing the pipeline in between. So if you're if you're a data analyst, you should be able to tell stories about recorded data and clean it up and process it and pivot it and aggregate it and all that stuff. If you're a data scientist, you should be able to build some kind of model on some platform that's going to predict the future or prescribe the future. And if you're a data engineer, you should be able to connect the disparate elements together in order to make those things happen. But Theus, absolutely. There's so much bleed over. I would say you're probably not a very good data analyst if you don't have at least a pretty good understanding of engineering concepts, how to connect some, because you can't go call the engineering team every time you need, I need like Alteryx connected to Tableau and Snowflake. I got to be able to do that myself. Everybody's got to be able to get a little bit of that.
Yep.
Agreed. Okay, so we only have time for one more question. I'm going to try and pick something that's...
I think you got all the ones that I uploaded.
Yeah.
I didn't get all the way through the list, though. More projects, more blurriness between jobs.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions.
We're going to go with this one.
This is a good one. I did upvote this one.
Bonnie, nice. Hi, Albert and Thais. What's your take on hiring for potential versus experience, especially for junior roles?
You can, this is another one where there's a lot of angst out there. And first of all, my recommendation is don't listen to the hate and discontent on social media. Just chill. You don't want to be the person out there griping about this ever. And it relates back to what we were talking about, positivity, right? You cannot create negative content. Cannot. Because it's going to stick with you. So hiring for potential versus experience. Once again, the must-haves on the job description, those are must-haves. And you might get an interview if you don't have all of them, but you can't bank on that. You should be shooting for jobs that you fully qualify for right now today. There are places out there that will hire for potential. For all the talk about the tough job market, go talk to a recruiter or a hiring manager. It's tough from their end too. It is hard to find good people. There is almost a bad word there. There is a ton of friction out there. If I can, delve into my economic background, but there's a ton of friction out there in the labor market, and it's tough from both ends. It's not a buyer's market where the robber barons are just sitting there like, let me get the unicorn of this 1,000 people. It's tough for them to find the best person. So I would say, like, you need to be realistic in your job search. Apply mainly for jobs for which you fully qualify. If you want to shoot for the moon with some of your time, if you've got time to budget for, tailoring great resumes for dream jobs where you got 70 or 80% of the qualifications, and you want to go in and sell them on, I learned quickly, which is another kind of trope that people go to. But, I know if you want to go in and sell them on, I see the job list Python as a requirement. I am an expert at R. I guarantee you I can learn Python like that because I know 3 other coding languages. Awesome. That to me is generally a fairly easy sell, but just be prepared for them to say, hey, we need somebody that can hit the ground running with R on day 1. We don't have time to train anybody because this is a startup and we all have 9 jobs. So know the environment you're walking into. There are big companies that can still afford to kind of train up a person with potential, but just know that you've got to sell your potential as something over and above. Like you've got to be someone worth taking a chance on. Because I guarantee if you walk in there, that hiring manager is going to be like, we took a chance on the last guy and he was terrible. And so we're not in the mood for that anymore. It happens. Don't bank on it.
Thijs, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, no, well, I agree with everything. Yes, I think one of the things that you, like I would say, you can market yourself like above and beyond is you can say, not only have potential, I'm adaptable. You tell me what you need and I'm going to go and I'm going to do it because, that's, I think I would say a advantage, let's say, of the potential is that you can show that you're adaptable to,
with an example.
Like
I've done this before.
Yes. Exactly. Yes. Not only just vague example. Hey, I've done this in this situation. And that, let's say it's a leverage that you have on the potential.
Yeah, that was my thought when you mentioned the I know multiple programming languages, but I don't know this one. It's like, if you know multiple programming languages, just go build something. Go build something, put it in your portfolio and be like, I don't really have experience, but look,
Yeah, and that's another piece of proof right there. If you say, hey, I looked this job listing up 2 weeks ago, and in that time I've, upskilled myself on Python. I've done this, this, and this. Check out this, this project I just knocked out 2 days ago on my GitHub. Like that's a winner right there. If they've got a little time for you to warm up, they might hire you.
Yeah.
But you do the work. It's not, don't sit there bitching about like, oh, nobody's taking a chance on me. Well, make it easy for them. Make the pitch. Why are you worth it?
Yep. Yep. No, I love the bluntness. All right. Amazing. So that is all we have time for because I am presenting in 3 minutes. So make sure you join for the next live show. Thank you so much, Albert and Thijs, for joining. This was an awesome conversation. I feel very energized going into my next hour. So thank you again so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope to see you in 2 minutes. But thank you.
Hey, guys.
Thank you. Bye.